everyone, and welcome to the Food Room. I am Arlene, and of course, in this series, we talk about food, buying it, selling it, growing it, cooking it, and of course, eating it. I do have a very special episode planned today, and I'm calling it the COVID Cook Up. But before we get into that, I would like to acknowledge you, my fans, my subscribers, to say thank you so much for your support. We are almost to 12,000 subscribers, and I have to say I'm truly flattered that you enjoy my content, and it really motivates me to continue to make more content for you. So we will celebrate when we get to that 12,000 mark, but for now, let's jump into the COVID cook-up. Okay, so before we jump into the COVID cook-up, let me just say this, that I am not an expert or trained in any particular field. This is not me giving advice. What this is myself and my colleagues have put together our challenges, ideas for solutions, and some questions that we would like to get some feedback on. And so it's just a compilation of all of our thoughts, and I am sharing it on this platform so that we can also get some feedback and educate and inform and so on and so on. So I have gotten it into different little categories so we can continue with that. But don't forget, I'm not an expert, okay? Okay, so we're gonna start with reopening and operating costs. Now, a lot of times people take for granted what it really takes to open a restaurant. Even at, opening into an empty space, the cost for equipment, the cost for appliances and furniture and things like that is super expensive. And a lot of time people gasp when I say that costs, that grater costs $300. And it's not because we want to get fancy equipment, it's what is required for us to be able to execute our jobs and do, quality food and quickly and all these different things. So restarting a restaurant also, just even if you have the infrastructure, there's a cost to stocking a certain amount of ingredients. Because don't you just hate it when you go somewhere and they run out of things all the time? One, it's a good sign because then maybe it's so good it runs out, but then you leave as a disappointed customer. So we have to have enough things and try to anticipate what the sales would be like for that day and have, things ready for the menu. So even to say, okay, let all the restaurants reopen, we have been closed for so long, to reopen is going to be a bit of a challenge, especially if you don't have that capital investment. Okay, so just something to bear in mind. Fairly new restaurants, practically what we have to do is start over. My restaurant is under 6 months, and it is like starting over. It is, because it was like a today for tomorrow kind of notice. Like today, okay, boom, we're closing, and that's it. So I had to release a bunch of my goods and give it away. So it is a loss. If you're not selling it, there's a loss. Then to reopen, there is a cost to adhere to the health regulations. So in some instances, little kiosks and things like that, they have to put up barriers between themselves and the clients. In some situations, you have to buy the stickers to establish, what the distance is, signage and all of these things. Those are additional costs that you would not have to incur before. But now you do. And again, we have not been out at work. We have not really been selling anything. And now just to reopen, you have all, not just the cost of ingredients, but all these other little infrastructures that have to be put in place, additional paper towels, hand sinks, things like that. So there is a cost involved in that. So, let's all bear that in mind when we're working with, the people in the food industry. And of course, there has been price increase for everything. Everything has gone up in price, at some point during this time. So the cost to operate that prior to the COVID-19 situation is much different for cost of operations now, albeit salaries or, how much cleaning products and procedure things and, all these things have a cost that you didn't have before. So just reopening alone, having the understanding that it's going to cost us a pretty penny, in addition to what we have lost with the sudden closing of restaurants and other food business, and even just the slowing down of it. So some of us couldn't operate at all. Some of us were able to operate like supermarkets and farmers and things like that. But they are also affected, reduced in sales and things like that, because if you plant 1,000 lettuce and 500 of your lettuce go to restaurants in your area, and all of those restaurants are closed, you would have been stuck with these 500 lettuce, and you either give them away or throw them away, and so you didn't make any money from it. So that covers the reopening cost and operating cost part of challenges that we have. We're going to talk about goods, raw materials next. So we have spoiled and expired goods. Now, because we had different dates and things were extended in terms of time frame and limitations and things like that, we couldn't tell how long or how short it would be in terms of the lockdown. And in some situations, restaurants or food places that were located in malls, we were closed before all the other restaurants were closed. So our time frame is different. So we would have had spoilage. We would have had things that probably expired. I know I had that experience where, I had some stuff there and I just had to get rid of it because it was going to expire. So I had to kind of get rid of it in that way. Because of that uncertainty, we would have experienced a lot of loss under those circumstances. Used and donated goods to avoid wastage. So something to bear in mind that I think a lot of people take for granted is this. If I buy an onion for $1 and I drove to the store to get there, it's $1 for the onion, there's a cost for gas, I had to pay myself to peel that onion, and I have to pay the electricity that keeps that onion cooled in the refrigerator. Those are all things that cost just to house that one onion. Now, if I don't sell a plate of food that includes that onion, I'm at a loss, greater loss than the $1 that I paid for the onion. And that is the simplest way I can explain how the cost just adds up. And we're not just losing an onion. So even if you had taken, in my situation, I took everything out of my chiller, I cooked as much as I can, I gave to my friends, I took some home just to avoid the wastage, but it's still a loss because technically I'm eating the profit, as they say, right? And a really good example of that also is fish. You get the fish, you season it, you portion it out, and then you eat it. That's more expensive, so it's probably a better example. And you didn't get to sell it, so you kind of lost that piece of profit. Price gouging was identified as one of the challenges. Now, I understand that there was some price increase. Some of it was really ridiculous, and you have to make a decision if you're going to accept it or not. But in some cases it was really blatant, and we just what can you do? What can we do about that? Ingredients are getting scarce, especially the imported ones. So some people do specialized items, the little baked things, special nuts, special boxes, things like that they normally import for themselves. And these items are becoming scarce. Remember, this is a worldwide thing, so it's not just specific to us here, it's everywhere. So if one part is affected in some way, it trickles all the way down. And this also ties into shipping is problematic and costly. And that basically speaks to, the borders and how things have changed in terms of frequency and shipping and all of those challenges. And so if we're not getting what we need in terms of, if you're accustomed buying your forks and napkins from one place, if they are shipping that, most likely they are, if they're having problems shipping, then you're going to have problems to get it. So, how do we work around things like that? What type of leniency or understanding we can get, from that particular scenario? Like, how can you work around that? Increased shipping costs due to supply shortage. So what my friend explained to me is if you're accustomed getting something from Grenada, it probably costs $2 to get it. But if Grenada runs out and you have to get it from Miami, it's probably going to cost you $10 to ship it from Miami. And therefore, that cost is passed on to the people that clear the goods, and that is passed on to the supermarkets, and therefore it's passed on to us. So those are some of the, well, that is one of the reasons that I got in terms of why prices are being increased. It's not always a situation of price gouging, but really it's a realistic situation for how the world and supply and things like that has changed. Just cost, cost to do things. Here specifically from us in Trinidad, I'm sorry, from us here in Tobago, getting us from Trinidad with limited travel. So we have opened back and we've gotten more flights and the boats are running. But there is still, of course, the social distancing and all those procedures that need to take place. So it is not efficient travel just yet. We can go back and forth more frequently now, but so typically in Tobago, sometimes I personally would have to fly to Trinidad for an item that we don't have available to us on the island. And if I can just quickly hop on a plane, go to that store, grab that item, and get back to Tobago, I'm losing a day of business. I'm losing a day that I can spend doing. So that is on a normal day. So far less for now, where you can't be as quick with your travel, as efficient, and so it kind of slows down our progress. I don't know if they're doing anything special to kind of, transition us into something a little more efficient, but that has been identified as one of the challenges that we have. Efficiency to acquire raw materials. Have you been to the supermarket? I had that pleasure the other day, and let me tell you, it is a nightmare. It is a nightmare. And I'm not talking about you're going to grab 2 items for yourself, because a lot of times people who are not in the industry tell me, no, but I went to the supermarket the other day and they had, potatoes. Yeah, they have potatoes for you who cooking 2-3 meals out of this potato, but they don't have the big bags that I need, So even when you go, you have to line up, you have to do this. So what typically takes us in the restaurant industry in particular, what typically takes us an hour or 2, and then we can jump into the kitchen. It took me 5 hours the other day because I had to go to like 3 or 4 different places, and it's the procedure, the washing, the lining up, the waiting. And don't forget anything, because you can't just run back in. You have to take a number and join that line again. And so what takes us an hour before now takes us 3 hours now. So the efficiency to acquire the raw materials in order for us to do our work really is problematic. Freshness of goods. Because things have slowed down, the things are on the shelf a lot longer. Canned goods and things like that, we know they have a good shelf life, and some of those other products. But even for vegetables, they already are perishable, generally, 2-3 days or whatever it is. But now, it is moving so slow. It's moving so slow. We are not able to get the freshest of items all the time. Specifically in Tobago, there are days when you get fresh produce, because we get a lot of stuff from Trinidad. So you have to know when to go to get the best of it. And that freshness, that quality is a challenge for us. We have to go in search of it, and that's tied in with how inefficient it is to just do your shopping. That in itself is a whole challenge. All right, so that takes care of all the challenges that we have so far in terms of goods. So now we're going to talk about funding. Okay, so based on what I have researched so far, no allocations have been specifically made for restaurants. I wonder if there is a real appreciation for our contribution in the fabric of society, what we bring to the table, what we provide in terms of social development. I can keep that for another episode, but I feel because we, as far as I know, we have not been allocated a specific fund for grants or assistance, I think that it is being overlooked. But that's just me, okay? Now, you do have the option of applying for a grant. However, you have to be in the pond with everybody else, every other industry, to apply for a small business grant for the COVID-19 relief. My I think challenge with that is typically grants take a really long time to be processed. We're talking months, and we really don't have months. So even with the grant process, is there anything being put in place to make it faster? Is there any type of stipulation that makes it just like tick some boxes, like a faster process just because it's urgent maybe? I have seen one of the forms for a COVID-19 relief grant, and I don't see, based on the questions that you have to fill out, I don't see any difference between that one and the one we had before, except at the top it just says COVID-19 relief. But I'm happy to be corrected, and you can share links and any information in the comments below as we go along. If you have any information to share, any input, please feel free. Okay, so next on the list, we talk marketing and strategy. Okay, so let me just insert my disclaimer here one more time. I am not an expert. This is just feedback from my colleagues in the industry. So when we talk about marketing and strategy, it's really how you sell your business. And one of the concerns that people have, or the challenges that they have in terms of just figuring out what to do next, is what to sell and how to continue your business. How do you continue to sell and market? I think that there are lots of platforms that share and offer advice. Just in general, there will be advice that will come out about how to do it within the COVID-19. But as a business owner, you have to kind of figure out what works best for you, because what would work best for KFC obviously will not work for my business. So it's trying to maneuver and figure out what works best for you, and how do we sell it? What do we sell? What aspect of the business do we sell? We need to figure that out. How to increase prices. So of course, with price increase for raw materials, we have to increase our prices somehow, somewhere, in some form. And sometimes we would absorb, $1 or $2, and we'll take that hit, because you can't just go around changing your menu every week, because something does go up in price every week. I have seen. But how do we strategically increase prices without losing our customers? How do we do that? How can we avoid it, rather? How can we avoid having to increase prices by so much that, it doesn't deter the clients? That is one of the concerns, in terms of strategy that people are fighting with these days. And considering collaborations, how do you know who or how to effectively collaborate with another person to boost each business or each entity? How do you figure that out? Is it a good idea for you, and are you collaborating on the right things? What are the things that people want to see or do or hear about, and things like that? So we have to think about all of these creative things, not just in the kitchen, but from a business standpoint as well. And that's all the points we have for marketing and strategy. Now we're going to talk a little bit about logistics and business models. Okay, so here's some ways that we think would help with some of our challenges. So distributors can be a little more lenient and provide security and support. So if you have distributors that you work with, I think what we're asking is, we might have an outstanding credit, or whatever the case is. Can we work together? Can we work together to get started again? Can we work out a deal? Can you give me a sense of security that you will continue to supply me? And on our end, can we promise to be honest and upfront with things, and make sure and pay your bills, just steal away if things don't work out? Can we work together from that? I think if we have support from the distributors, that will ease some of the pains that we have, and it works out for both parties on the end, because if if you give me a little bly here, I can sell the food, I feel good that I'm able to get this bly, and I can definitely pay you back. Creativity and innovation. This has always been something that you should have in your business. I always have an open air, an open door for just, in my community, I would say, where people would come and ask, what I think about this and things that they can do to be innovative in their business. If it means that if you can afford to do, flags on the back of bicycles to do your delivery, a conveyor belt from your cash register to where the customer is, creating smaller meals for cheaper, or that type of thing, all of those things would count as long as it's appropriate for your business. So we have to have some innovation and share ideas and things like that, and assist one another. Ramp up your customer service. So yes, these are dire times, it's challenging, it's stressful, but comfort the customer. Okay. Closed international borders will impact us in Tobago because we don't have the population. So this is what I have observed, specifically in Tobago. We have a small population, we have quite a number of restaurants and supermarkets and so on. But we do rely not just on visitors from Trinidad, but we also rely on the international visitors, the little that we do get. Because our population still is split up into people who only cook at home, people who are vegan and probably don't eat out as much, people who, based on their disposable income, will only eat at certain places, and then when it goes higher up the chain in terms of price point, only a handful, which we have to share amongst, 15 of us are sharing the same handful of people that buy food within our price points. And they also buy food at cheaper price points as well. So if we rely only on the persons living here in Tobago, it's not going to necessarily be feasible for all of us to exist. So we do rely on that. So with the borders being closed, we are definitely going to feel the brunt of that. And even though they've opened up the inter-island travel, Trinidadians coming specifically to Tobago, their disposable income has been affected as well. So we don't know when we're going to see the boom, when people are going to be back out at their jobs and still, paying bills that won't be able to pay, that they were not able to pay before. So that in itself is quite, an aspect to have to consider. A couple people said to me that they're concerned about trying to go out and do a little bit of sale every day because the landlords might think that they are making a lot of money. There are expenses that exist in a business that no matter what happens, you have to incur, and rent is one of them. It's a fixed figure. It doesn't change in any way. If you need to sell 100 things to make rent, let's say, and business has dropped where you're only doing 20, it's not possible for you to do your rent. It's not possible for us to pay. And I think landlords kind of need to be a little more open-minded where this concept is concerned. Not because you see the doors open and people walking out with boxes necessarily mean that they're making any kind of money, because some of us are staying open and doing the takeaway in an effort to stay relevant. And so I get that as a challenge. So you have to kind of have that communication, have that leniency as well. Okay? One other concern was not understanding why there are items in Trinidad that are so much cheaper than the items than when we get it here in Tobago. That has always been a challenge. Somehow a price of a single thing can go up by $100 just because it crosses seas. So now I think it's just, an add-on to that. Typically, for me personally, I usually have to jump on a plane sometime to get a very specific item. A plane ticket is $300 and I have to fly there to get an item for $500. And that's just an expense that I have to kind of absorb personally because I want to be able to offer this particular item to my clients and so on and so forth. So if anybody could address that, I'm sure we'll all be grateful for that. And finally, service can be affected with reduced staff. If your operation typically runs with 5 people and now you're running with just 2, the length of time might be affected, the efficiency might be affected, but we have to take responsibility and not just throw our hands in the air and say, you know. But you know how things can get sometimes. We have to work extra hard to make sure that, you know, the service isn't affected by this because we are in the service industry. Okay, so of course, those are all the challenges that we have, all the problems that we're experiencing. And we're not just going to pose problems, we're going to talk about solutions as well. I am Ali. This has been The Food Room. It has definitely been a pleasure. Bye.